Imagine walking into ancient Athens and telling people, "Personally, I don't believe in Zeus." For them, it would sound as weird as saying today, "Personally, I don't believe in Wi-Fi." You and I, we grew up in a world where belief is a yes-no checkbox. Do you believe in God? Do you believe aliens built the pyramids? Do you believe your horoscope is written by a cat with a laptop? But the ancient Greeks, they didn't think in that system. For them, the question wasn't, "Do you believe in Zeus?" It was, "Do you bring the offering on time or do you want a plague?" Because in Greece, religion wasn't about believing the right ideas. It was about doing the right things, lighting the incense, marching in the festival, sacrificing the cow without dropping it. Yes, there were instructions. Lots of them. For example, in the 2nd century before our era, between the cities of Miletus and Magnesia on the Meander, the locals put up a big stone slab with a step-by-step manual on how to keep Artemis happy. A harpist, exactly one. Flute players, as many as you want. One pompous parade, 3 sacrifices, a perfect bull for Zeus, an animal for Artemis, a goat for Apollo. Then carved very seriously into the stone is a list of who gets which steak from the sacrificed bull. Because wasting food is basically a crime against barbecue. The biggest steak goes to the priest, then to the politician, then to the local celebrity. And then carved even more seriously into the stone is exactly how to feed that bull, where to get the grain so he becomes nice and meaty, and so on. So yes, ancient Greeks who were not dumb at all considered it totally reasonable to invest their time into taking a hammer and a chisel and carving into stone the size of steaks, and who must stand behind whom, letter by letter, all to butter up Artemis. Many, many words about what exactly you must do. Not a single word about what you must think. No, let Artemis into your heart. Think whatever you want. Just feed the bull properly so this hot-tempered goddess does not have another meltdown. The Greeks didn't have a holy book telling everyone what to think. No pope, no theological police. Just a world full of gods and rules for how not to annoy them. So when you ask a Greek, "Do you believe in your gods?" the Greek silently asks back, "Why? Is there an option not to? And why was there no such option? Because if you ignore the gods, they will shut you down. Ask Agamemnon, the man who commanded the greatest army Greece had ever seen. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, all ready to sail to Troy. There was only one problem: no wind. The ships stood still, the men roasted on the beaches, and everyone started to whisper, "Maybe Artemis is angry." Now, that was not a good sentence to hear, because when a Greek said, "The goddess is angry," it did not mean you had upset her feelings. It meant the laws of nature had stopped working until you fixed it. So the priests start digging through omens. The augurs check the birds, the stars, the smoke, and the message comes back. Artemis wants an offering, a very specific one, not a bull, not a goat, his daughter, Iphigenia. No one in the camp thinks this is crazy. They think it is procedure. A tragic one, yes, but still a part of the system. Because the gods are like bureaucracy, cold, ancient, and very serious about their paperwork. And the fine print of the contract says, if you want wind, pay in blood. So Agamemnon hesitates. He argues. He tries to stall. But in the end, he signs the form. He brings the offering. And when the smoke rises, the wind begins to blow. The ships move, the army cheers, and the greatest war of the ancient world finally begins. That is the logic of Greek religion. Not do you believe, but did you fulfill your part of the deal? So, when the gods send you a message, you do not debate it. You execute it, preferably before the next inspection. To understand how that logic worked, you only need to look at Zeus. Zeus is the perfect example of how the Greeks could hold two completely different ideas in their heads at the same time. On one hand, he is the supreme king of the universe, the defender of justice, the protector of oaths, the guy you call when someone is being a complete jerk. On the other hand, he is also the jerk. The king of lightning bolts is out there transforming into animals, sneaking into bedrooms, and causing the kind of family drama that would make every daytime soap opera raise its eyebrows. But here is the thing. For the Greeks, this was not a contradiction that needed to be solved. This was just reality. Zeus is powerful, and power can be messy. You respect him not because he is a saint, but because he can throw a lightning bolt through your ceiling without even standing up. To the Greeks, the important part is that Zeus keeps the world running. The sun rises, the laws have weight, the weather happens, and sometimes the right people get what they deserve. And if they do not, well, maybe Zeus is busy dealing with a Titan or cheating on Hera again. Who knows? The point is simple. Zeus is real. Zeus matters. And Zeus does not need to pass a background check for you to bring a sacrifice. You do it because angering the boss of the sky sounds like a very bad life choice. But religion was not only about surviving the gods, it was also about choosing the right one, preferably the one with better branding. Take Athens. Before it became the birthplace of democracy and philosophers with complicated haircuts, it was just another city trying to decide which god to put on the logo. Two candidates applied for the position of divine protector. Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and general drama, and Athena, goddess of strategy, wisdom, and clean city planning. Both showed up for the job interview. Poseidon went first. He struck the ground with his trident, and a spring of salt water burst out of the rock. It was impressive, loud, and completely useless. You could not drink it, you could not farm with it, but it looked fantastic. Then came Athena. She quietly planted an olive tree. No thunder, no waves, just a tree. Shade, oil, food, peace. The citizens voted, or at least the myth says they did, and Athena won. The city was named Athens, and the olive tree became its sacred symbol. Now, of course, Poseidon was furious, and because he was the god of earthquakes, he had a rather destructive way of expressing his feelings. So Athens built him a temple too, just in case. That was Greek religion in a nutshell. You could have faith, but you should also have insurance. For the Athenians, worship was not about inner devotion. It was public proof of loyalty. You honored the gods not to be saved, but to prove you were a good citizen. When Pericles built the Parthenon, it was not just a religious act, it was marketing. A marble advertisement that said, "Our goddess loves us, and our city can afford it." Faith was performance, procession, sacrifice, music, applause. A festival of loyalty to the gods and to the polis. But not everyone was happy with this arrangement. Some Greeks began to ask dangerous questions. Questions like, what if the stories are wrong? Or even worse, what if the gods are just metaphors? Meet the philosophers, the ancient world's version of people who correct you in the comments section. First came Plato. He looked at Homer and said, "These stories are terrible. They make the gods look jealous, violent, and irrational. We cannot raise children on this." So, in his ideal city, Plato banned the poets. Because when Zeus turns into a swan to seduce someone, it is not mythology. It is bad public relations. Then came Epicurus. He agreed the gods exist, but said they do not care about us. They are out there somewhere in a perfect cosmic suburb, ignoring humanity completely. The good life, he said, is to stop worrying about divine drama and enjoy your garden. The Stoics disagreed. They saw the gods everywhere, in fire, in water, in reason itself. Zeus, they said, is not a person. He is the order of the universe, the divine Wi-Fi that keeps everything connected. It sounded elegant. But still, even the most enlightened Stoic did not skip the annual sacrifices, because deep down, everyone in Greece understood the rule. Thinking was optional. Sacrifice was not. No one wanted to be the philosopher whose cow stayed in the barn when a plague started. While the philosophers were arguing about cosmic principles, most Greeks were busy living their lives. They did not need theories. They needed rain, good harvests, and children who did not get sick. For them, the gods were not distant ideas. They were neighbors, loud, emotional, and sometimes very needy neighbors. If your field was dry, you brought a cake to Demeter. If your ship was leaving port, you poured wine for Poseidon. And if your baby had a fever, you promised Apollo a small statue, just in case he was listening. The historian Plutarch once wrote that ordinary villagers near his hometown believed the ancient hero Agamemnon was still ruling somewhere, now disguised as a Roman emperor. That might sound naive, but it was not stupidity. It was how myth and reality overlapped. The past was never gone. It was just sleeping under the surface. Dreams were another doorway. People dreamed of gods all the time. And when they did not rush to psychologists. They rushed to the temples. Because dreams were considered messages. If Artemis visited you at night, it meant she wanted a new statue. If Apollo appeared, he was probably reminding you that his festival was next week and you still had not bought the goat. The line between religion and routine was so thin it barely existed. For the Greeks, faith was just good maintenance, keeping the cosmic machinery oiled and running. Centuries passed. The gods stayed, but something in the way people looked at them began to change. When the Greeks became Romans, they took their gods with them, rebranded, renamed, and translated into Latin. Zeus became Jupiter, Aphrodite became Venus, and Ares, Mars, the favorite god of anyone who owned too many swords. But behind the familiar names, a quiet revolution was happening. Philosophers started to tidy up Olympus. Too many gods, too many stories, too much drama. They began to say things like, maybe these are not real gods. Maybe they are spirits, symbols, forces of nature. And so the old gods were promoted sideways. They became daemons, spirits in the air. Not good, not evil, just intermediaries. Divine middle management. By the time of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, educated people no longer prayed to Zeus. They meditated through him. He wrote in his diary that Zeus was not a person, but the logic of the universe itself, a kind of divine operating system. Others, like the satirist Lucian, simply laughed. He imagined the gods watching from the sky as a philosopher on earth proved mathematically that they did not exist. And the gods panicked, because if no one believed in them, who would feed the bulls? Religion became philosophy, philosophy became poetry, and poetry became nostalgia. The myths still lived, in art, in theater, in language, but fewer people expected Zeus to actually show up with a thunderbolt. By the end of the Roman Empire, the gods were fading into metaphors. They still had temples, but most of their followers had already moved on to newer faiths with clearer manuals. Because eventually someone did offer an alternative, a religion that asked not for sacrifices, but for belief. So, did the Greeks believe in their gods? Yes, completely. The gods were the rules of the world. They were the wind, the storms, the justice, the luck that decides who wins the coin toss and who gets hit by a runaway cart. But did they believe every myth exactly as written? Not really. Myths were stories. Some people took them literally. Some treated them like history with special effects. Others saw them as poetry about things too big to explain. And no one thought you had to pick one correct answer to be a proper Greek. Belief was not a quiz. There was no badge for perfect theology. What mattered was simple. You honor the gods, you follow the rituals, you keep the sky calm and the crops alive. Because the gods do not vanish when you stop believing. They just get annoyed. So if you ever find yourself in ancient Athens, do not worry about your personal philosophy. Just make sure the offering is ready, the festival is on schedule, and nobody has offended Zeus today. The Greeks did not spend their lives asking whether the gods were real. They assumed the gods were real and asked a much more urgent question. Are the gods happy with us?